So I had a neighbor drop off a riding lawnmower. He says it's not currently running. When he gave it to me, he said he'd replaced the carburetor already. He replaced the spark plug, and it's still not running right. He says it's not turning on. It'll crank but not turn on. So a quick, rapid way that I use to kind of diagnose when engines are not running. And the engine needs three things to run. It needs a mixture of air and fuel, it needs spark, and it needs compression. The air and fuel. Let's talk about the air and fuel mixture. Air and fuel, everything has to do with the carburetor. Air comes in, usually you have an air filter right here. Air goes through here. The carburetor, it mixes with fuel. As the air passes through, it picks fuel up and mixes it and puts it right into the engine. Okay, that's the entire air fuel part of it. Once you have the air and fuel mixture, it comes in here, it goes into the cylinder. That cylinder then, as the piston moves up, it compresses that fuel mixture. Once it's compressed, the spark plug ignites and you have a miniature explosion. Then of course it goes through the exhaust. That's the most basic way you can look at how an engine needs to run. So if we start looking at how we can eliminate very quickly what the issue is. Most of the time the problem is the air-fuel mixture. Usually the carburetor's gummed up, there's some old fuel in there that's clogging something up. So we can essentially bypass the entire carburetor by getting starter fluid and actually spraying it into the intake. The reason why starting fluid is so effective is because it's very volatile and the window that it'll ignite is very, very broad. Fuel, on the other hand, needs about a 12 to 15 to 1 mixture. You need 12 to 15 parts of air to 1 part of fuel. If it's not in that range, it doesn't want to explode and ignite. So by taking starter fluid, spraying it down into the intake, take off your filter of course, spray it down to the intake, then you try to turn on the lawnmower. If the lawnmower turns on even for 3 to 5 seconds, we know that this is a fuel related issue. By putting in starter fluid, we are eliminating the carb because we're taking the place of the carb. We're mixing the air and the fuel for the carburetor itself. So this would be a good example if you have old fuel in here and it's gummed up, all the little jets. So I'll show you right here, the engine will not run. Okay, so we add just a little bit of starter fluid, and it doesn't have to be a lot because this stuff's very volatile, but we put it on the intake. Okay, now if the engine runs for a few seconds, we know that this is an issue inside the carburetor. Okay, so immediately we know the problem is the carburetor, or at least the fuel getting to the carburetor. So we can rule out electrical problems, we can rule out compression, because we know the engine will run. So you have to start looking at the carburetor and everything that goes with the carburetor in terms of fuel. Now in this case, yeah, we have a fuel shutoff here. I set this up to mimic a plugged up carb. Obviously in this case I have the fuel shut off to show you that, but 90% of the time this is probably going to be your issue if you have a small engine that will not run. So that moves us on to our next part. If you spray starter fluid in there and it doesn't want to run at all, you don't get any kind of combustion, then we move on to the spark. Okay, there's an easy way to diagnose if your spark plug is bad. You can buy, these are very inexpensive. This is a spark plug or a spark checker. So you unplug your spark plug. Here's your spark plug. Here's your spark plug wire. You attach your spark plug checker onto there. and then attach the other end into your spark plug wire. Okay, when those are all connected, there's a little light in here. Okay, and that light lights up when there's spark happening. Okay, so you plug that in, plug that into there, and then you crank it and you look for a light. Okay, this is an easy way, but it costs money because you need to buy this little part. If you don't want to buy that part, you can also do this. So start by taking your spark plug out. For those of you who don't know how a spark plug works, this is an insulator, usually ceramic or porcelain. This right here will conduct electricity, but it will not pass it through what it looks like, kind of like this gold part is. Spark plugs work by arcing electricity between this little top piece, that little teeny tiny point. Gold part that you see here, that's the ground of the electrical current. The little tip is the positive. So in order for a spark plug to work, this gold part has to be grounded, and that's usually achieved by when it screws into the engine, it's using the engine as a ground. So it's really easy how we can test this. So go ahead and plug this in to your spark plug wire. So you connect your spark plug back like that, and you have to make sure you don't have fuel sitting around, because if it's working, it's going to send a spark through here. You also want to make sure you're being safe. Don't hold on to anything that's metal. Hold on to the boot, okay? And this needs to be grounded, or else that electrical current's not going to try to complete. So valve cover, part of the frame, anything that's metal attached to the engine should work. So this is grounded out. And now you need an assistant, and you need to try to crank it for about 3 seconds, and we should see a spark. Okay, so in that case we saw a very small spark. It looked really weak and it wasn't consistent. If you don't see any spark at all, then we know it's a problem with the electrical system, and that can either be the spark plug, it can be the magneto, it could be any other parts of this. If the fuel's not the issue and you're getting really good spark, then the only other thing it could be would be compression. Going back to our pie chart here, compression, okay? Air fuel's good, spark's good, then it only leaves compression. Compression, unfortunately, if you have a problem with compression, there's not much you can do in terms of simple fixes, because it's usually going to be a problem with the valves, with rings, it could be a head gasket that's blown, just a number of things. Luckily, I would say 90% of my repairs have to do with the carburetor, okay? So 90% of the time when I get a small engine that's not running, spraying a little starter fluid in there, it'll turn on for 3 to 5 seconds, shuts off, boom, we know it's a problem with the carburetor. Starter fluid doesn't work, then I check the spark. Okay. Almost every other time, it's going to be, if it's not fuel, it's going to be a spark issue. Okay. So either replace the spark plug, look at the magneto. If you've eliminated all the issues that it could be from air and fuel, and if you've eliminated all the issues it could be from spark, then it's going to leave compression as the only other thing. You can rent compression gauges typically from your AutoZone. They're really inexpensive to buy as well. All you have to do, you thread them into where your spark plug goes, and then you just crank it, and that'll give you a good compression reading. But that's going to be for a different video. I have another video up there to check compression. I also have a video to check leak down tests. But typically speaking, it's not going to be a compression. It's going to be either air fuel or it's going to be spark, and almost always it's going to be air fuel. So that's a quick, dirty, down and dirty, rapid way of testing what's going on with the small engine. Thanks.